This is the Tabernacle podcast with John Vermillion and me, Britton Bishop. What's up, John?
What's up is I am having a memory. A memory of back in the day watching late night television. It didn't matter the show. Could be the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, because that was the only Tonight Show. The rest were posers. It could have been Late Night with David Letterman, and that was the only late night. The OG late night talk shows.
Okay.
They had one specific guest that when you found out he was going to be on, not because there was a TV, like a guide that came up on the screen. It's because we got a TV guide book. When you found out that Robin Williams was going to be on one of those shows, it was never just don't miss, because what would happen is Robin Williams would take over that show. He was a guest, right? But he wouldn't sit in the couch. He'd be bouncing on the couch. He'd be rolling over. He'd do everything wrong. He'd be, spilling David Letterman's coffee and talking 100 miles an hour. Now we know it's because he was on cocaine, right? But yeah, I'm having that memory because of our guest today, not on cocaine.
Where are we going with this?
Exactly. Where are we going with this? We don't know where this is going to go, and I'm fired up. So
awesome. Yeah. Today we are joined by
Robin Williams,
the one and only Brian
Williams,
son of Robin.
Yeah, son of
the John Williams.
One of the John Williams.
Yeah,
the one that we all know, not the
one you know and love.
Composer.
Not the composer. And this is Brian Williams, the pastor, not the news talking head.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Who embellishes his record. No, this is a different. Yeah. Even though that is your Facebook profile.
It is.
Yeah.
I thought it would be funny. There used to be this thing on Facebook where they would like, hey, what's your celebrity lookalike? So I put Brian Williams, the news guy.
And you don't look anything like him.
Not even a little bit.
Your name alike.
But we're the same in nameness.
So if you're just joining us, Brian is, first of all, a man of God. He is the husband to Leah. He is the son of John and Barb Williams, who are on our staff. Brian is a former staff member at the Tabernacle, but is currently the founder and lead pastor of Restoration Church in Traverse City. So, there's some people might not know you.
There are.
It's been a while.
When I led worship on a Saturday night a couple of weeks ago, y'all should go to a Saturday night service sometime.
You didn't know anybody.
You never know who's going to be there, but the sound guy had no idea who I was.
Yeah, he was like, hey,
cool.
Are you new here?
You lead worship here often? I'm like, used to.
and you're sitting there going, I designed the soundboard you're sitting at. I picked it out. I shopped for it. And then you got a tear. Yeah. Good to have you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Britton, your podcast voice is wonderful.
It changed.
Changed.
That was a backhanded slap at me because I sound like some sort of duck.
No. Britton, you have a podcast voice,
and
then you have your
face. So
a face made for podcasts,
and then we ruined it by going to video.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I wear a hat. People are like, man, he's so lazy, he doesn't do his hair. You saw it was under the shadow.
Oh, I haven't. My wife still cuts hair for family, and I haven't had a haircut in 6 weeks.
Well,
good for you.
Welcome to the pod. This was originally your idea back in the day, and then COVID happened, and now we're here. And so I'm pumped to have you on the podcast. We're going to dive into your Change Life story, which if you haven't listened to or have listened to Change Life stories, essentially we're just going to long-form testimony of how God has worked in your life and where he's at now currently and how he's moved through the ups and downs. And so I'm excited because you're a cool dude, and I'm excited to hear about your Change Life story. So Tab family, this is Brian Williams' Changed Life story. So the way we usually start these is we'll just hop in, like growing up, first few memories, like you said it at the very beginning, like what was it like growing up? Were you born and raised in church? How was that?
Wasn't it born and raised in Georgia? Parents are poor sharecroppers?
Yeah. How did you know that's exactly where I was going to start? I was literally going to say I grew up a very poor boy in the South.
No, not
we
even
loved
close.
Football and
peanuts.
That's pretty much all that we did.
My father was a peanut farmer.
He was.
Well, you grew up in South Michigan, or from here.
South of here.
Yeah, it's kind of the middle. Sorry, you go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in a little town called Lowell, Michigan. Now, it's weird to say Lowell. especially on an audio podcast. So
I knew a guy named Lowell.
lol, so you can get lazy with it. Yeah, I grew up there. We're off the rails already. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I grew up there. Born and raised there, and didn't move out of that area until we moved up here. Really, we were always kind of in that surrounding area within 45 minutes or so. So, yeah, grew up there. It used to be a nice little small farming community. We lived like a mile from my grandparents' house, so we spent a lot of time there. Cousins all over the place, big family, 9 aunt and uncles. My mom was a family of 9. I don't know how many siblings my dad had. We weren't as close with my dad's family, but they were hog farmers. So we didn't like going there because, sorry if you're listening to this.
Because you don't like bacon?
We didn't like the smell of the pigs.
dude.
Gotcha.
The old summer smell of pigs, and you couldn't escape it no matter where you went. So, and they were all older. I think my dad's the youngest in that family, and so, and my mom's almost the oldest, and so on my mom's side, we all had cousins and stuff that were all our age. But on my dad's side,
Yeah, they were all
my
old people.
my cousins were like my aunt and uncle's age on the other side of the family, so I didn't know who was who.
Gotcha.
Anyway,
So
So
big
that's how I grew
family.
up.
Did you? How many brothers and sisters did you have?
God, asking all the hard questions. How many? I have one sister, and I have 4 brothers. One of which, this is my first memory, was my brother passing away when I was 4. So
Was he younger or older than
he
you?
was younger. So
Okay.
he was a twin to my younger brother. They were 2 when he passed away.
Mm.
So I was 4. So that's my first memory.
And it was super traumatic too, right?
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think your dad, if people have heard John
probably
Williams'
shared it,
Change
right?
Life story,
Yeah.
he talked about that part of their life, especially him and your mom's story within that. So you were 4, so it's probably just a traumatic time walking through that. Where you can so we don't have to deep dive it.
No, that's
but,
cool.
Yeah. Was that a confusing time, or was there much there? Or was it?
Honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Here's what I remember. I remember the day it happened. When he died, I remember that day. I remember it must have only been a few hours after that. In my sister's room with my grandma, and we were on her bed. That's all I remember from that. I don't remember another thing from that. And then after that, I don't know what age I was when anything else happened. So
Gotcha. Yeah. So what was
those
your
good old
father,
trauma brains.
what was your father's job at that time?
He worked at this little company called Amway.
Oh yeah.
He went door to door. Sold
No,
soap.
he didn't do that. He worked in the warehouse.
He was a traveling salesman
He was
with a
a-
briefcase
hey,
and a nice
Hey, I'd like to talk to you about a
corduroy
multi-level marketing
suit.
scheme.
Yeah. He had non-distinct office space that could be changed over immediately when the pyramid scheme fell through.
Happening.
We moved a few times.
That's none of this is true. None of this is true.
No, he worked. He started, I think, when he was like 18 as a janitor at Amway in their facility, making soap and stuff. He didn't make the soap. He just cleaned with the soap that they made.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then he was there for, I don't know, 30 years, worked his way up the old corporate ladder, became a supervisor. And then in 2000, I think it was 2001, he lost his job there, was retired early, as they like to say. Political correctness has always been a thing, right? So he was retired early and decided he wanted to go into ministry at that point. So I was in high school at this time. He got his first ministry gig paid in 2003.
Okay.
So I was in high school. I was graduating.
So did you grow up going to church?
Oh
every
yeah,
Sunday, all
yeah.
that?
Yeah, I was in church since the day I was born, I think I was born, and then we went to church that next hour.
Yeah.
I think is the way it worked.
And did
So,
you like it, or was that like, what are we doing? Or did you not even know any different?
You know, when I was just born, I didn't really know any different. But as I got older, it started to. I started to think, I love church, but I would go to these Christian rock concerts. So I grew up very Baptist. My whole family did. That's how my mom was raised. My dad wasn't raised that much. He can tell you. I'm sure he did tell you on the podcast. He was not Baptist growing up, but my mom was. So he decided he also would be if he wanted to marry her. I think that's how it went. They can fact check me later, right?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I grew up very Baptist. We went to church every Sunday. Every Tuesday was prayer meeting. Every Wednesday was youth group or Awana, Approved Workmen Are Not Ashamed. That was the.
I've never.
Did you guys do Awana?
I got kicked out of it.
I helped teach it, but I never knew what the letter stood for.
Yeah. Oh man, it stuck with me.
I thought it was like one of those old Hebrew words, like an obscure Hebrew word for we memorize Bible verses and do crafts. Yeah. I thought that's what Awana meant.
Right.
I went for dodgeball and snacks.
Hey, Awana's done a lot of good, but I'm down.
It had. Yeah.
I'm down.
Right. Are you starting Awana?
No.
Oh.
No. Tell me what it stands for again.
Approved Workmen Are Not Ashamed.
All right.
Yeah. So
that's a Baptist came up with that. For sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We love our acronyms and stuff. So
and then that person's son came up with Bible Man.
Yeah.
Who I saw Bible Man at Big Ticket, and it was the most frightening thing I've ever seen.
Sure, it was.
There was a grown man in a purple suit.
How are you guys still Christians?
No, this was as an adult. And I was like, I'm not going to expose my kids to this.
As a kid, we had Salty the Singing Songbook. Is what we had.
I just want to say thank you to my mom and dad for not making me go through that.
It was a pretty good experience. I mean, and my parents weren't like the super Baptists that you see where like you can't go to movies, you can't go to dances, you can't
play with cards.
Although that was a little bit, they weren't allowed to on Sunday. You couldn't play cards on Sunday, but like we would go to movies. I remember I think the first PG-13 movie I went and saw was Independence Day, and I was a scared little kid. I was always afraid of everything, and so my dad sat me down before the movie. He was like, "You are not sleeping in our room tonight." Okay, Dad.
And then you watched it, and you were like,
"I need to sleep in my parents' room." Yeah. So
you essentially you were born in the heart of the Baptist ghetto.
Oh yeah, totally.
And raised.
Yeah. So we had, music was a big thing for me. I didn't know it at the time, but music was a very big thing for me. And I would sing along to the songbook. I could kind of know where you would go up here, like with the notes on all the piano music. I still don't know how to read music, but I knew that way went up, your voice goes up and then down. That was always a good time. Then I would get really, really bored during the message because there was no such thing as cool tab kids or like here's our kids ministry program. We had nursery if you weren't old enough to sit in the service and you were a crying person. So I would like take a nap on my mom's lap, and so we would go Sunday morning, Sunday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday, and sometimes my parents would clean the church too. So like my life revolved around school, football, and church and family. Like those were the things that we did. And so music was a big part of it. Piano, that was all that piano and organ.
It was that Baptist.
Yeah.
So it wasn't hip with the kids Baptist.
No,
it was like
nope. Piano.
That's like old school Tabernacle.
Yeah.
Bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, we will come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. You're welcome, Tab family.
Yep.
First time I've sung in a long time.
Well,
don't let Darcy hear this podcast.
I've never been more flustered as a podcast host in my life.
Sorry,
hearing all this stuff like Vacation Bibles, like we did every church thing, like we were doing it.
Yeah.
And so like I remember the very first time we got drums in the church, and they weren't be on stage; they had to be off to the side. There was a lady that played the drum.
The drum. Wait, can we just dissect that? There was a lady who played the drum,
and she wasn't on the stage.
Did she only have one stick?
I don't know. It was always very, very, very light, like not how a drummer should play. And like I said,
was there also a can on the side? Clank.
Right. No, you can't have cans in church. So,
This is also why our staff got nothing done the entire tenure that Brian was here. They had to put us in separate
My
meetings.
entire goal from
bad influence on me.
2014 to 2020 was just to get nothing done.
No, it was to distract me and have a good time.
Yeah, that is true.
Sorry, Britton. My deepest apologies to you.
Oh, you're fine. But you did say something earlier that I want to circle back to. So you grew up kind of in that Baptist ghetto, going to church every time the doors were open, sometimes being the ones that opened them to clean it and all that. But then you hinted towards you went to some Christian rock concerts.
Yeah. The music part. So I would listen to music, and we couldn't listen. Sometimes we could listen to country, and I don't know why that was what we could sometimes listen to, but sometimes we would put on the country radio station. I was like, yeah, we got something. Sing along to Garth Brooks. I would sing the words wrong. I didn't know what they meant. But you're singing along because you're a kid, and this is kind of a long form way of getting to what I want to talk about. But I would be singing in the back of the van. This plays in later, and my siblings hated it when I would sing in the van. And we would go on trips everywhere, and I would always sing in the van. And they'd be like, "Shut up! We don't want to hear you singing anymore." So, from the time I was a little kid, always singing in the car, I started getting this complex. I better not sing because they don't like it when I sing. Just log that in your brain for later.
I got it.
Got it. Okay.
Is that going to be an Easter egg later?
We'll
in the second episode.
Yes, well, it'll all make sense later. So we would listen to some of this other music, and the biggest band at the time was DC Talk, Newsboys, and Audio Adrenaline. Those were the big three of Christian rock music, and I would listen to it. My dad would take me to the concerts. My mom didn't really like that style of music, but we would go to the concerts. My dad and mom were both involved in youth ministry, so they would take youth groups over there. They would miss Sunday night church sometimes with the students, and we'd go to these concerts. And so I'm going to these concerts, and again, it's like DC Talk and whatever, and we would watch them, and it's a full band, guitars, drums, cool lights, everything was happening, and I'm having the time of my life. And I remember thinking, even middle school, why can't the church be like this? Why can't why do we have to come back to a piano and an organ? Why do we have and from that young age, I just started questioning things of why are we doing this the way that we're doing it? And we'll get back to that later too. But that was a big thing for me. And so I joined the choir at church, but I wanted to make sure that I sang bass because I thought if you sang higher, you were girly. And so I was like, I got to be masculine. So I'm going to sing. I don't have a bass voice at all, but I tried. But I sang in the choir in high school. And yeah, it was going to youth group, going to all of the things. I had a date with this girl. It wasn't my wife. It was before I met my wife. And as a Baptist, you're a good idea for a good time is to do whatever the church function is. And it happened to be a Tuesday, which was prayer meeting day. So I took a girl to prayer meeting. Yeah. With all the old people in the Baptist church.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Smooth.
Yeah.
So I got a question. You had mentioned something, I think, before the podcast. Somewhere in there, did you have some type of an experience where you gave your life to Christ?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, that was...
Or is it kind of harder to pin down?
No, there was a certain time. I mean, you sort of... I don't know. I heard Francis Chan talk about it probably the best way. I was 6 years old when I said the prayer to have Jesus come into my life. I was in my cousin's basement, and they're like, "Have you gotten saved?" I'm like, "I don't know what that means." And they're like, "You got to ask Jesus into your heart, otherwise you go to hell." I was like, "Okay, I better do that."
Yeah.
And so, I said whatever that prayer was when I was 6, and then immediately started berating my younger brother Jerry, "You got to get saved." I remember one night, just, "Are you sure you meant it? Are you sure?"
And Jerry's like, "Leave me alone.
I just want to sleep and then
alone."
moan in the morning because that's what I do. Yeah. So So it was like 6 years old when I got saved. And then there were just moments along the way, where you start to deepen your faith. You start to understand more of who the character of God is, what he's done in your life, and what he continues to do in your life. So, 6 years old when you first kind of come into that understanding that Jesus died for our sins, and then growing up, like learning different things in middle school, high school, and then, even adult. Like there's moments where it's like, you rededicate your life to Christ, you walk forward, whatever, all of those things. So,
was there any, like, because you were saying, like, you were questioning, like, why do we do it this way?
Mm-hmm.
Was there any moments, like middle school, high school, where you're asking those questions and it was affecting your view of God, or was it always just your view of the church?
It was always my view of the church.
Okay.
It was always like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why can't we play drums? Why can't our music be like that? Why can't we not wear a suit and tie? Like, why? Like, why are these the things that we're sticking to?
But it wasn't.
It was never a salvation issue or
Right.
a God issue.
Or like
it was
associating those things to the character of God.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and then there was like a church that started. They're still going today, and they're a really awesome church down in Lowell. They took over the Wesleyan church. The Wesleyans always had the best. Like they started the whole thing, right, John?
What are you talking about? Started what?
Like the whole
That was my ghetto.
cool. I know the cool church movement. Like in the late '90s, like they're like, we're gonna start resurrecting these churches, small country churches, into something that's more modern and cool. So
right. And bringing in that devil music.
Yeah,
with them devil drums.
Not wearing the tie. So there was a church that did that in Lowell, and people started leaving the Baptist church, I think, and going there. And I remember the conversations were always like, well, they're gospel light over there. They don't really preach the gospel. They're just very seeker friendly. Like all of these things we were accusing this church of because people were showing up at their church. It's like, they must be doing something wrong because people are showing up there.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah, right.
The last 200 years of church history.
Yeah. So, but I was always envious of that. Like, no, I think they're doing something right. I don't think that they're doing something wrong. But I couldn't articulate that very well when I was a kid. It was just like, I don't know. They might be all right.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting because I come from like Bible Belt, Oklahoma, and I remember there was this time of like First Baptist Church, and then we moved, and like I didn't go to church very much, and then the next church I went to was like more of a drums on stage and stuff like that. And I just remember like I still didn't want to be there, but that's my own issues and this isn't my story. But I do remember being those moments like, is there something wrong with this church? Like, are they doing something wrong? And it was just my perception because of how I had grown up in the church, but I obviously didn't have like those inklings of, no, maybe they're doing something right. But now, obviously, and that's something we even run into as a church in Manistee, which I think is interesting because it's a very high Catholic population in Manistee, and then the churches that are there are very traditional.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people that you meet somebody and like, oh yeah, I'm a pastor at the Tabernacle, and they're so confused on like how we're a church or what are we. And I'm like, you should just come sometime. And like, oh, you guys are the rock and roll church, and I've stopped. I'm like, yeah, that's us.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
But it's just an interesting thing whenever those things start to shift and how tradition can seep into those things, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
So was that I'm assuming like your friends and stuff started going to church there?
No, my friends all stayed at the Baptist church. Like, I was a kid who, I was pretty popular in the youth group, but I had a few really, really close guy friends. We did the quiz team. That was,
quiz.
So where I never studied, I was there socially. And so like, the most nerve-wracking thing in my life ever, and I've been married, I've had children, the most nerve-wracking thing for me was not making because you had these little buzzers on the chairs, and if you got up, that meant you had the answer to the question. I never had the answer to the question ever, not once. Like I think I might still have the Guinness World Record of never standing up for this thing. But the scariest thing was like,
so you were on the Bible quiz team, but really you were just. There was no it was just is.
Yeah. This is just the time to hang out with my buddies and
gotcha.
So and go to all these different churches and whatever. But I was petrified of having to sit in that chair and then accidentally like move and
be called upon,
and be like, because then your buzzer goes off.
Brian
Oh,
Williams.
this guy has the answer.
I just shifted.
Oh!
Jesus.
Yeah. What do I do with my hands?
I'm
in
not
this
sure what to
mode
do.
with my hands.
So, I don't remember what question you asked, but
Well, so there's so much like church here. Like, did you go to school? I mean, it's
yeah. So,
no, you didn't do anything wrong there. It's just you're there. Like you were right. You said football, school,
right,
and church.
Yeah.
But all I've heard is church. And so I'm like wondering whether there's any time
there was
for
football
anything else.
practice. Yeah, we would do we were all we went to every high school football game.
Gotcha.
We played football since we were
Your dad coached too, didn't he?
maybe.
At Lowell? I thought
Is that what he said in the
Yeah.
podcast?
I don't remember.
He was the equipment guy for a long time.
Okay.
After he was also on the chain gang when he was in prison. Sorry, I said chain gang and it reminded me. That's where you're holding the yardsticks.
Yes.
So in football we call that the chain gang.
Yes.
For those uninitiated, John.
Oh, I'm initiated.
Okay.
Touchdown Jesus.
Yeah, so they were doing that,
I
and
played
then
freshman football.
I know you did.
did
It
you?
was a bad experience. This is not
Oh.
my story. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so he was on that, but yeah, it was our life. So I would stand on the sideline with my dad on the chain gang, and I got to move the clip along.
Yep.
And I got crushed by high schoolers. I was like 10 years old, 8 years old probably, and I'm moving the chain thing and not paying attention to what's going on around me, which is a dangerous thing when you're on the sideline. And I just got completely bowled over, and I just found the quickest adult I could find and jumped up into the guy's arms like, I'm hurt, and was crying. But yeah, so my dad did football, like that side of things. We were involved in it all the time. Like it's all I ever wanted to do. Like I wanted to be Barry Sanders growing up. Like that was my thing. My older brother Mike played football, and he was really, really, really good at football. Like he was the star athlete, but wasn't a star athlete mindset. He just super humble guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was, all conference team, defensive back, kick returner, whatever, and did track, was super fast. And I was just like, man, I'm never going to live up to those expectations. So I finally, like right before my junior year, I was like, I'm out. I'm not playing football because I'm not going to beat my brother. And that was kind of like a continuing theme for me, was like, I'm always not enough. Like that was and I don't know where that came from. I know it didn't come from my parents, but whatever it was in my little lizard brain was like, Brian's not enough. And that's, 38 years old. Am I 38? I'll be 38 this year. And that's still the driving force behind a lot of what I do is like, Brian's not going to be enough. Brian's not going to be enough. And it's just that little stupid voice that just keeps pestering your mind. So yeah, so that was kind of, growing up, it was football, school, and then if we weren't in football or school, it was all church stuff.
Was your life consistent from church to school, or did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was I was a rule follower too, which is kind of funny now. But yeah, I never strayed away from that. I mean, outside of what every other 13, 14-year-old boy gets into. When the internet's invented and your parents don't know anything about internet filters, and so you have to teach them as a 15-year-old, like, hey, we should probably try to figure some of this stuff out because it's the Wild West out there, and I'm learning a whole lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't be learning right now. But outside of that, like it was just, I was the same at school, at church. I was just Brian.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So coming out of kind of that high school junior year, whenever you kind of have that moment of, well, I'm not going to be Mike, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be Mike. So was there a moment like of, well, who am I going to be? Or was it just, I'm just going to kind of do this thing and find my way through it? Or was there like a shift of like, this is who I'm going to be?
No, I don't think I ever planned anything out.
No.
I'm still that way. Like, let's just do something and then figure it out later. Yeah, no, there wasn't ever a plan. I thought I wanted to go into youth ministry. I met my wife my senior year, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll be a teacher. Maybe I'll do something. But I wanted to be involved in church, and so I was like, well, and growing up Baptist, you can't be a lead pastor unless you're 80. So you've got to you've got to have 15 degrees, and you've got to
you got to get the right seminary,
Right.
the right letters behind your name.
So
and know the right people. And,
the church hierarchy is like you start as a youth pastor, and then maybe this, and then maybe that, and then maybe someday you'll be a lead pastor once you've put in your time.
And you got 2 years, and then you're probably gonna die.
Yeah. Right. I made it. Oh man. And so so I started jumping ahead, and so I had those. There were 3 guys that were from the church that were all older than me, but we all heavily invested in each other and looked out for one another. And like those 3 guys were the guys that I was with, and they kind of kept me from everything else. So, you want me to smile real quick? So that was kind of the upbringing. Like I didn't stray from Jesus. I didn't stray from the church. I never it was always a part of what I did. Yeah. So then I was like, okay, so let's do youth ministry. So my dad became a pastor at a small Bible church in Clarksville, Michigan, which is about 20 minutes away from Lowell. You've been there, John.
Mm-hmm.
John, you were there. And we so I was going to school. I went to Grace Bible College for a semester. I went to community college because I had a scholarship, and then so I was there for a year and a half, and then I went to Grace Bible College for half a semester. Now, this was before there was any sort of online classes or anything like that. The other Baptist thing is you get married young. You just because dudes want to get married, right? And so I don't remember how old. It was 2005.
You were 17.
I was 17.
2005, got married.
Yeah, I got married in 2005, so 2 years after high school.
Close, you were 20.
I was 20 years old. Leah had not yet turned 20. She was going to turn 20 in 2 months. I was turning 21 in a month. And which didn't matter to us or me because Baptist, right? You don't. Right. Who cares if you can't drink at your wedding because you can't drink anyway. So, so we were 20 and 19 when we got married, and then I was like, well, this was before internet school or anything like that. So I guess I'm not going back to school, and so I just started working, and then I was interning as a youth ministry support, and then my dad needed help as doing youth ministry at the Clarksville Bible Church. So I, at the ripe age of 21, decided to take on the youth group at Clarksville Bible, and I was 3 years older than some of the kids, and so started doing youth ministry and realized pretty much really quickly that I was like, boy, I really don't like youth ministry that much. Because I just don't like high schoolers, and middle schoolers are not my favorite people in the world. Sorry, Benji.
Oh, he's high school.
Right. Yeah.
No offense taken.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, so I did that, and then they needed, I was playing guitar, but never really leading worship. I would lead the worship band, but I never led worship. We started a second service that was more contemporary. So this one we did traditional service, contemporary service, and the two shall never meet. And you can't do a mix, and it's just let's keep them separated. We would do once a month. We would do a Sunday night thing where it was even more rock and roll, and it was pretty wild. So
you're playing.
I was playing guitar,
but you're not singing.
I was not singing
because of
my
siblings
childhood.
Said,
see,
shut
call
up.
back. See how that went? Yeah. So I grew up all of high school and stuff thinking that Brian can't sing because obviously if I could, my siblings wouldn't have told me to shut up in the van. Mm-hmm. And so, it wasn't until it had been a couple of years I was leading the band, but not leading the vocal, the worship part of it. And so I was saying, no, do this, drummer. You're great. Whatever. Keep doing what you're doing. Here's key. Let's make this sound really good. And then got actually a really good band going. And then we were walking out, typical musician, So this was in Clarksville. Grand Rapids is probably a good 45, 50-minute drive away. And one of the guitar players didn't have a ride and couldn't drive because they didn't have a car. So we would take the church van, go all the way out there on a Thursday night, pick him up, and then come back for rehearsal, and then drive him all the way back home in the church van, and then come back. And so we had a lot of drive time together just to hang out. And I remember one night we were walking out to the van, and I was singing along to a Chris Tomlin song, whatever the song was that we were going to be doing that weekend. And the guy who was leading worship at the time, he was like, why aren't you singing? And I was like, well, I can't sing. And he was like, yeah, you can. you should try leading it sometime. And so, like, I don't know, it was like 3 weeks later, I think I led a song for the first time. Again, no plan. Like, this is just, okay, here's what I need to do. And so I did it. And when I started doing that, I was like, yeah, I could see myself doing something like this. And so
the people in the church didn't say, stop singing.
They did not. They actually joined in.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
That was good. Yeah. And from there, just kind of kept growing.
See, I could see just that part of your change life story. Like, we could probably make a movie with Kirk Cameron playing the part of Brian Williams. Think?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a little bit older.
I mean,
okay, Kirk Cameron's son.
okay.
I threw you off with Kirk there, didn't I?
Well, I was hoping maybe somebody like Ryan Reynolds or
bro,
Ryan
it's got to
Gosling.
be. You forgot. This is a Christian Ghetto movie. This is brought to you by
This
the
is
makers
gonna
of.
be on, It's going to be on Pure Flix.
Okay.
This is Pure Flix. This is brought to you
Crowdfunded. Yeah.
by the makers of Fireproof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, brother. Nice joke. No, that is a cool story though.
Yeah.
That part. So you start. So now you're leading worship. So your confidence is going,
Yeah, sort of.
or it's starting to rise.
Yeah, but it's still that idea that Brian's the worst thing about this still. And so it never, I always assume I'm the problem. Which again, I don't know where that comes from.
It's okay. This is our podcast. We can have therapy.
Yeah.
We're going to listen without judgment.
Yeah, thank
and offer
you.
strength and hope.
So that was that was good.
That was our staff meeting last week.
Oh,
There you go.
lovely.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I always just assumed I was the problem, and no matter what it was, like, and there were people starting to show up for that second service, the more contemporary one. We actually started to fill the church up, and it started to get bigger. But I still
I've been there.
Yeah. But I still only thought, no, there's not enough. And I'm doing something wrong. Like, I'm the issue here. Like, Jonah and the whale, like, I'm not doing something right. Like, so I got to get thrown overboard, because then it's really going to take off, right? So
Did that ever, so I'm just trying to think through this, like, how did that, in your your personal relationship with God and all of that, how was that sorting through all of that? Was there any time of like, man, what, like, did the gospel ever feel like not real for you, or like you weren't good enough for the gospel, or did any of that stuff ever occur in the midst of all that?
Maybe not completely connected, but growing up in a Baptist church,
Right.
It's like, do all of the things if you want God to love you. Like, this is what you do.
It's kind of that
so it was
performance-based acceptance.
Yeah. So, but we all know who we are,
Right.
on the inside, and so it's like, well, obviously, I'm not good enough to be doing any of this stuff. So, I again, like Jonah, like, he was disobeying God, so they had to throw him overboard, and then they could finally get on their way. And I always felt like I was Jonah, needing to get thrown off the boat in order for it to really take off and succeed. So I honestly thought, even though I was doing a lot for the church, I assumed that when I left, it was going to explode. Like, it was just that I was the thing holding it back. Kind of the opposite happened. But still, it was just, those were always the things that went through my head. It was like, Brian's going to be the...
And where were you working at the time? So you've got a family, you got a wife, or kids coming along.
Oh, yeah.
You were married young.
Yeah.
Kids started coming young.
Yeah.
And then you're working where?
I was working for a monument company at the time, originally, when I first got married.
Right.
Curveball.
Right. But then when you were leading worship at that church, were you not like
I was
a sound and light?
Eventually, I did that.
Okay.
Yeah. But originally, we were just making gravestones. Is all was my job, was to do that, which was really fun. Look at all these people dying! Wow, it was great. And then I was managing a band at the time, a buddy of mine's band, kind of doing multiple different things, always involved in music. And we did a gig where this new sound company came in, AV rental company and like installation company. They were just getting started. They came and did the sound for us one time, and we got talking with the sound guy, and he was the owner. And so we started having more and more conversations. And so in the wintertime, we would get laid off from the monument company. Because nobody dies in the winter.
Okay.
And so it's a little fact. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but just look it up. It's fine. And people are like, well, I don't think that's, I think I'm remembering history wrong. So we started talking with this guy. So during the time that I was laid off, I would do some work for them. And then it just kind of started growing more. I went on the sales team, and then one of the most wonderful things happened with the monument company. The guy who owned the company knew that I wasn't in it. Like, he was like, you're not meant to be doing this. I've had two people say that in my life. One was my brother when we were doing drywall. He was a drywaller, and I did that when I first got married until Carson was born. I was like, I need to find a new job.
Who was the coolest kid ever?
Carson, yeah.
No offense to your other kids. Love Jordan. Love your girls.
Right.
But Carson's cool.
Yeah, Carson's a cool dude. So we... I just lost route. Oh, so the guy at the monument company, he was like, you're not going to do this. And then, so he's like, we're going to lay you off. That way you can collect unemployment. I know you're not getting paid except for like sales things, like if you sell a job or whatever at this company. So do that, and then here we go. So he allowed me to do that. I collected unemployment, and I started working for this AV company where there was 4 of us. And it just started growing rapidly. Like, we started getting more gigs to run sound for. We started doing installs, and like it just snowballed and got huge in a span of like 3 years. And then so I was in sales, and I started designing systems for churches, which is where our story intersects.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened?
Well, the short version from our end is somebody knocked over some bubbles on the soundboard that we owned. Yeah, there was a kids event going up here in T1 before
That's
we
why
built
we can't
T2.
have haze.
No, that's a separate issue. That's a separate issue. Yeah, so somebody, there was a bubble machine, I think it was, that was balanced on the edge of the soundboard. This is why, if people wonder why our sound booth, I guess that's what you call it, doesn't have a flat top. It's so you can't put your coffee cup there and ruin the soundboard. So someone did that, and then we got a hold of somehow your company, and that's how the relationship began.
You guys, because way back then, this would have been in like 2012. We were talking about. Oh no, it would have been 2013 because I got fired from that job in 2013. The company grew so fast that like we were just putting ourselves wherever we could. I somehow wound up as the operations manager of this company, and 2 things I don't do well: operations and management. Like, if you put me in anything remotely close to management or operations, like it's gonna fail. And that was
seems like a good fit for lead pastor,
right?
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah. So I got fired from that job. And the guy who fired me, like this management, it's a long story. A management company came in because the company was bleeding money. Management company came in, cleaned house. The guy who was from the management company met with me and was like, "Why aren't you doing full-time ministry?" And I was like, "Well, I'm so important at this church right now. I was preaching every once in a while. I was leading worship. I was on the board
at the Clarksville Bible. Still all there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I was like, if I left, no one who would do the things that I'm doing. And the guy was like, "Oh, okay, so." God can't fill your role then, is that what you're saying? I was like, Stop it. So I was like, okay, maybe full-time vocational ministry is what I'm supposed to do. And so I started pursuing that. But in the meantime, I met another dude. This was when I first started getting the idea of like, I want to plant a church in a brewery. I've never been in full-time ministry before. I've never done anything like this before, but I think I should lead a church right now. I didn't go to school for it. I'm just like, this is me like, let's just see what happens, right? And so, like, I started having conversations with people. I would go. I was working on this for this awful company that just weren't great. But I was going to meet with all these churches for AV stuff, and like with every church, I would talk about AV for about 5 seconds, and then start talking about this brewery church idea with them. And they're like, "Oh, cool! You should talk to this guy named Kevin, because Kevin, this would be something right up his alley." And so I met this dude named Kevin at Founders Brewing in Grand Rapids, and we started chatting about that. And he was like, "I own an AV company. Why not? In the meantime, and while you get this thing started, why don't you just come work for me at my AV company? It's just me and one other guy right now, and we keep it small and light." And I was like, "Okay, I've done that before." So another startup AV company, why not? But they were going to pay me, so I was like, "Cool." And so our office was in his basement. It was fun. And so for the next year, I was back into sales things, and that's when I got a hold of the Tabernacle. I just started looking at architects and builders who were building church buildings, and one company had all of their projects listed on their website. And so I was like, well, here we go. And so I just started emailing them, and one of them was the Tabernacle in Buckley, Michigan. I was like, I don't know what this place is, but I'm going to find out if they need anything. And then that coincided with the bubble machine. Mm-hmm. And then I started meeting up here. And then I was like, there's something so weird about this place in a good way. Like, why are there this many people coming to a church in a town this small? Very similar to the town that we were in at the time in Clarksville, like, 300-400 people. And there's a church of 400 people in this town. Like, that doesn't, we're only at like 165 where we're at. So what are we, what are we doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? So we need to find out some more information from them. And so that's when we brought the lead pastor, my dad, the secretary, all came up and visited with you guys.
Yeah, we had a real interesting combo. And then I can't remember, it was a couple months later or
it would have only been like a couple months later.
Then they invited me to come down and speak.
Yeah, it was actually on the way down. The lead pastor was like, sorry if you're listening to this, you're probably not. He was like, what we really need is for that guy John to come down and speak to the congregation about what we need to do. Like,
yeah, that was weird. But we did it.
Okay.
We were like, okay.
So I contacted you guys, and I'm like, do you guys want to come down and speak at our church for us? And so you did, thankfully. Yeah. I was leading worship at another church at this point, one that we were doing AV stuff for, and we were kind of flirting. I was finally getting paid a couple $100 a week to come and do their music for them. I was the interim worship leader for them. We were having some conversations, like, I interviewed for their full-time worship pastor position. But for both of us, the lead pastor and me, we were both like, I don't think this is right for us, which is kind of cool. Like, we were just both listening to God at the same time. It would have been easy for them just to hire me, and it would have been easy for me just to take that gig, even though I didn't connect very well with the church very well. I don't think the lead pastor and we could have worked together fine, but we knew it wasn't going to work. So we were in a Starbucks, and we're like, let's just not do this. We're like, cool. So then I led worship this weekend. I just happened to be there that weekend.
When I'm speaking at your dad's church,
at my dad's church,
and you're leading worship.
Yep.
And there was some confusion on our end because one of these was not like the other, meaning that Brian Williams is like, okay, this guy's hip with the kids. He's leading. At that time we had an interim worship leader ourselves, and we were like, oh, we need somebody bad, and so there was definitely, the radar was on. It's like, oh, this might be the guy. But I didn't know all the players. Like, I thought you worked there full time. I didn't realize that you were just filling in that day. And so there were some other elements of the service that I'm like, if he's a creative arts guy, I'm not sure. There was some sort of, I remember there were beach balls hanging from the ceiling, and then there was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus painting in the corner or behind. And then the best part was the interpretive dancers. That did a presentation with a cassette tape, I think, or either
What
a
year was
CD.
this?
But this
Yeah.
would have been 2013.
Cassette tape.
No,
Yeah.
2014. This was
Yeah, they were
2014.
ready to start, and then they were all in position, and then the lady had to go back and start
Well,
it. And it was just
here's
awkward.
the best part about that is we're on stage ready to get started with the service when she comes up and says, "By the way,
There's going to be an interpretive dance.
we're
thing.
doing a thing."
Yeah.
And I'm like right now?
Yeah. So you're standing there
So I'm
awkwardly
standing,
going,
like,
okay.
There's
I'm sure you hid your awkwardness really well too.
God, yeah, I'm the best at that. So I'm on stage, and we've got the band with us, and then like these interpretive dance girls are in front of me, so all I see is their backside, and I'm like, where am I supposed to look right now? Like, I want to look like I'm interested. I'm not 100%. I'm checked out of everything happening right now at this church service. But I'm just looking around like, I've never seen the ceiling. So, it's just like, this is the weird. And then they left, and then we did our thing.
Yeah. So I think it was later that spring, probably around May. I was actually gone, and we needed a guest worship leader. And so our staff guys that were interested in Brian, he came up and led worship, and then my phone started blowing up. I was actually at a speaking event, and sorry to give details people listening may not be interested in, but it's just cool how, as it just so happened, the way it worked is people started saying, this guy, there's a connection. Like, he immediately connected our people with God, our people with him. And I don't know all the stuff that God had going on in your life at the time, but it was a godsend. I mean, up until that moment, we'd never had somebody with a heart like David that could get up there and lead us in worship with excellence, who could sing, and who, students thought all sounded like John Foreman, from Switchfoot, and looked like him too. And it was kind of this whole deal. And so then the wheels started turning, and it wasn't long after that we asked you if you might be interested in. I mean, there was a hibachi visit down in Grand Rapids, but what was, short of all those things, like all the nuts and bolts, what was God doing in your heart, you and Leah both, to be like, we're going to leave the only place we've really ever known, the Grand Rapids area, and step into full-time ministry up here?
Yeah. This is both a blessing and a curse for both of us. My wife puts up with so much.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Tabernacle is both a blessing and a curse for both of us.
No. Here's the blessing and the curse is I am so naive about just about everything. Like I said, like quitting football and doing whatever, like I don't think 2 steps ahead. I don't think 5 steps. I don't even think 1 step ahead. I'm just like, what should we do now? And Leah has been amazing through our entire marriage of just being like, I guess this is what we're doing now. And she's always been on board. She'll speak up if she's like, no, don't do that. But 9 times out of 10, she's always like, yeah, this seems good. Like, we've always walked in step together, her and I. And every major decision that we've made, we've never had a long conversation about it. And it's just been like, yeah, this is what makes sense for us. Like, this is the next thing. Let's go do it. So that's both a blessing and a curse, because it's great because I don't have to think about it. It's a curse because then I'm like, what did I just do? Right? And so we came up here and led worship the very first weekend in May. So it was like May 2nd or 3rd.
As a guest or as a staff
As a
member?
guest.
Okay.
As a guest worship leader. And I remember that Sunday morning driving in, it started snowing.
In May.
And we're like, we're only 2 hours south of here, but this is ridiculous.
Welcome to my world.
Why is it snowing right now? But we was like, whatever. Okay, cool. Snow in May. Ha!
Yeah.
Glad we don't live here, right? And so, but then like, I don't know, a week or 2 later, you guys contacted me. You guys had a student ministries pastor that was leaving as well, like in June, I think, or July, August, I don't know. But he had announced that to the staff that he was going to be leaving. And so then you guys called called us to ask if we would interview, and we're like, sure. I'm pretty sold on this brewery church at Founders right now without any sort of idea of what we're doing, but let's go see what's happening up there. And I don't want to say this for everyone, but for us, it's when we sense God speaking to us, I don't want to call it a feeling, but it's a feeling that we both have, like, this is the next thing. So when we sat down and chatted with you, we felt like it went really well. It just felt like it was the right thing for us to do. We hoped you felt the same way. And on the way home, it was like, yeah, this is really cool. If it happens, we had just bought a house a year ago, in Lowell, like in my favorite town. Like, I loved that house. I loved the property. I loved everything. When we bought the house, I was like, this is it. We're not moving from this place ever again. And then everything started breaking down. Like, bad things started happening. It was a country song. Like, my dog died, lost my job. Like, all those things just started happening. And God was just preparing us that whole year that we had that house. He's like, oh, you think this is your forever home? Your furnace is going to go out. Your dog's going to die. When you buy the house, you're going to lose your job. Like, all of these things, like, don't get comfortable here, right? Because I've got something else for you. And so, so we did that interview thing, and I believe it was Memorial Day weekend. I got the job offer from Mr. Jonathan Wright Vermilia,
present,
who was in a tent camping in his backyard with his son Benjamin, who was just a wee little lad at that time. And by some miracle, we were still up at like 11 p.m. And I get a text message from John. I probably still have it somewhere.
I'm trying to get deals done, man.
You text job offers late at night.
Yes, I do.
Hey, do you want to come join the Misfit Toys up in Buckley? And I was like, yep.
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
So we moved up here
Awesome.
End of June.
And
in 2014.
everything changed.
Everything changed for the better.
Yes.
Yep.
Seriously, Tab went to a whole nother level. Darcy and I made lifelong close friends. You lived at my house for the first couple of months. That was fun.
That was interesting.
No,
I talked about...
it was fun for us.
Awesome.
I don't know about for you.
The entire experience moving up here was incredible because... so we've got 4 kids. Elena was 8 months old, 9, 10, I don't know. Somewhere in months, not yet years. And we moved up here. We were able to stay in, Leah's aunt and uncle had a cottage in Cadillac that we were able to stay at for free. The only problem was every once in a while they would text us and be like, we've got people coming up this weekend that they're going to stay at your at the cottage, so you guys have to get out. Like, oh, all right, cool. I mean, what can we say? We're staying for free,
right.
Whatever. So we would go and leave. We'd probably stay with you guys, I would imagine. I don't remember exactly where we would stay.
It was us.
Yeah. And
cool.
so we'd stay for the weekend and then go back home. Except one time, Leah had all the kids in tow. She was going to go to the grocery store. She got all the groceries at down in Cadillac, and she goes to pull into the driveway of the cottage, and there's cars still there. This is like Sunday at like 7 p.m. We're supposed to be back in the cottage, but there were cars still there. And so she calls, and she's like crying on the phone because we've been nomads now for 2 months. We're trying to buy a house. It's taking a long time. And she's like, I don't know what we're going to do, whatever. And so John and Darcy were like, just come back over here. And so we did for 2 weeks. We went back over there. It was
awesome.
It was
Our kids had a blast.
Oh, we did too. It was great because now we're not driving 30 minutes to get to work. We're right in Buckley, and I get to hang out with John, which is every staff member's dream. So,
You said it.
Right, John?
I hate you right now. Robin Williams is in the room. No, you did it wrong.
What? Oh. There we go. Yeah, so I get to become best friends with John Vermillion immediately. Like within 3 months, John and I are thick as thieves. And
Thick as thieves.
and so that was awesome. And then another house became available. So we stayed there for a month. Oh, there was a week where we stayed. I don't know why we did this, but there was a week where we stayed in a camper in what is now the parking lot of T2.
That is true.
It was
Not with us.
Used to just be
that
field.
was on your own. Yeah.
That was just our family for a week. So we had water hookup and stuff.
Yeah.
But so we stayed in a camper for a week. We were traveling back and forth between Cadillac and Buckley, and then John's house, and then this other house. School was starting, so we finally found another place to rent for 2 months, and then we finally got to move into our house. So from June until Halloween, we were just trying to figure out what are we doing.
Yeah.
But it was awesome because then I was finally doing something that like God had put on my heart a long time ago to be in like specifically vocational ministry.
Awesome.
And you were leading youth, and you were also
I was doing
leading worship. It
Yep.
was a big job description.
Yep.
But I just remember you brought, and still do, a real joy wherever you go. And it's cool to see, despite the fact that the messages that you struggled with early on,
Mm-hmm.
and that and you've been authentic and honest and said that you still struggle with them. But
100%.
I think all of us, deep down, if we're men and we're honest, every man wants to know, does he measure up?
100%.
And there's this little voice that says, are you good enough or not
Mhm.
good enough? And there's different ways that comes out.
Yeah.
And some, it's more extreme than in others, but you're a very introspective guy, which is a good thing. As like, God, what are you doing in here inside my heart? And
Yeah.
so what I remember is just a real passion that you brought, not just to leading worship, but you were attractional. Students wanted to go to Firehouse again, wanted to go to Foundry. Not that they didn't want to before. I mean, we had the unique opportunity of your predecessor in student ministry had already submitted his resignation. He wanted to go back to seminary. It wasn't a bad departure.
Right.
But I've never heard of a situation where the outgoing student min guy and the incoming student min guy actually overlapped for a month or a little bit longer. Yeah. And you actually kind of worked well together.
We did. Yep.
And I remember Zach going, oh, I kind of wish I could be on the same team with him. And it's like, there's no more salary cap room. So you're committed. No, he didn't try to get out of what God was calling him to do. But it was just cool, just having you part of the squad for so many years. You introduced us to so many people. You pushed us in ways I wasn't ready to be pushed.
Yeah.
He has a weird habit if he sits next to you in a staff meeting of flicking, grabbing, or rubbing your earlobe.
Yes.
Just to get your attention.
He'll do
And
in local coffee shops, he still
in
does.
local coffee
He still
shops,
does that.
yeah, you like flick it off. You're like, oh,
Man,
it's
I
a real
haven't seen
human,
Brian
right?
in months, and it's instant.
Instant. There it is. Yes,
That's
yes.
his handshake.
Yeah. Our random whistles
Mhm.
or hums and
Yes, yeah,
John would, you still with me?
yeah.
You
Hey,
still
Brian,
here?
hey, Brian, you there? You there? You
Yeah.
there? Hello? And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I was doo.
Right. Which is really great for me now because I preach in a brewery that is filled with pinball machines. There's so many lights and so many dings and so many things happening. We had to turn all of them off. And it's just distraction is always an issue. Just my mind woo, there it goes.
So in the midst of all that transition and change and stepping into what you feel like God is calling you to, you're bouncing around, all that stuff. What, just kind of coming back to that changed life story piece of that, like in your personal relationship with God, is there just a joy, like a new desire just to be closer to Him? Like, I'm in vocational ministry now. Was there a point, like, what was going on in the midst of all of that while all that other stuff's going on?
Yeah, that was all unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
When you first start out, you're like, oh my word, I get to call myself a professional musician. I get to study the Bible. I'm very naive person. And so like coming into the gig, it's like, I get to practice music, study the Bible, and just hang out with people. This is going to be the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And that's a large part of it, but it's not all of it. So, during that time, it was just like, I'm finally doing what I have been wanting to do for a really long time,
That's
but
cool.
never could put words to what I actually want to do. Growing up, so my dad worked at Amway, and then he just volunteered at the church, and so I just assumed like that was, unless you were the lead pastor, that was all ever got to do, and so I just assumed I had to become an accountant.
Like it never crossed your mind, like, oh, I could just become a musician in the
because
church.
Because I didn't want to be the guy doing this on Sunday morning all the time, just conducting the music. I don't know how to play piano, and so I'm not going to be this guy with a suit and tie standing behind the pulpit. Like that's just not going to be me. And so it never clicked in my mind that I could do that. And I don't talk the same way that the guys
that ever do that.
Right? I don't talk the same way as the old guy that's preaching right now. Like so I'm not ever going to be able to be that. So I might as well be an accountant. I don't know why I picked accounting. That was just like, this is what I hate I hate all of things in accounting. And I frustrate my accountant now because I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you explain this like a third grader? Yeah.
What is Michael Scott? He's like, just pretend you're explaining this to a fifth
That's
grader.
That's me. Yeah, only less. Like, he's like, I need you to do this, this, and this. I'm like, I don't know what you're asking.
I know.
Please stop.
We get like the monthly reports.
Yeah.
And after this podcast, I asked Beth on Tuesday, I said, hey, you've been sending me an email for about a year. I don't know how to read it.
Right.
Could you teach me how to read that?
Exactly. Yeah. But I thought that was supposed to be in my life.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden to be like, because this was a very, very short time that this happened. I mean, like from being up here the beginning of May to getting the job offer by the end of May, then to being there in June, like all of a sudden, like we were right where we wanted to be, where we thought God wanted us to be. And so like in that time, it was like, I don't have to be an accountant. I can do this.
Right.
And so it was like pure freedom.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So your time as a tab, you make lifelong friends.
Yes.
You've actually, I'm not going to, like, I want to get to the change life part. Your life is changing. You're starting to realize God is using me not just as a musician. God has also given you opportunities to speak and preach, not just with students.
Mm-hmm.
T2 is built.
Yep.
You're bringing more and more just through your networks, people in joining our creative arts team, including Victoria Hughes.
Yeah.
And her husband, Lord Matthew Corey Hughes, and a
Your
lot of
best
people.
friend.
Yeah,
Guitar
yeah,
Hughes,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Your best friend.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
FFL.
and just other folks. But there's this kind of holy discontent, to use a ghetto term. There's there's something else. There's like, does it have to be this way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk us through that, man. The part you want to share.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, essentially, what I'm asking you to do is share what led you to break up with me.
Okay.
Traitor.
Yeah. So it was, and part of this is Leah's story. So maybe you'll have to have her on some point to let her share her side of everything too, because there's a large part of that as well. When T2 was built, that was a huge undertaking for all of us involved. And like the weeks leading up to it, we were so busy with getting everything together, making sure the sound system worked. Like I remember, like we'd be leaving by 11 p.m. A lot of nights getting things ready for it. And at the same time, I know she won't mind if I share all of this. My wife started having panic attacks and a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of deeper things that go into that we don't need to
there's
get
nobody's
into,
business.
But, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and I was starting to get more and more tired.
Ministry's getting bigger, faster.
Yep.
Pace is increasing.
Yep.
The demands are increasing.
Yep.
We got to get 6 weeks out, 8 months out. I was part of that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And it was,
and we didn't have the staff for it. You didn't have a secretary. We didn't have budget for that. You
Right.
know,
Yep.
still running on a shoestring.
Yeah. And when we started, here, there were 3 guys in the band. It was Marcus Burgess and Charlie and Todd and me. That was the band. I don't even know who the tech team was. Mr. Mustache, Steve Arnott, and a couple others. Ben Brown was part of the tech team. But that was about it as far as like the creative arts team. And in the span of 6 years, it would have been less than that. It would have been probably 3 or 4 years. Like we had all of a sudden grown this team. So we're now I'm spending much more time in front of the computer working on programming, working on making sure volunteers are scheduled, all that kind of stuff, and a lot less time just being around people. And and so it started to shift a little bit for me, but I never had a sense of like, no, I need to leave. I remember I've always been drawn to what new things can the church do, and how can we reach people in a different way? And the Tab was absolutely 100% a part of that. Like that was probably the biggest reason outside of John Vermillion that I that I moved up here. And
I thought you were going to say moved away.
No, that we moved up here. It was. And I remember I had this meeting with you. We would meet every once in a while. And early on, I had gotten a copy. I don't know how I did it. It was on the internet somewhere. Of the amount of people that were in the Buckley area code 49620. Like that area code. How many people are in this place? How many of those people have kids? And I was looking at Foundry, and I was looking at how many people were still out there, and I was like, we're not doing enough yet. Like there's still more to be done because there's still all of these kids out here. And so I've always been drawn to, yeah, great, there's people here, but now how do we get more people here? Celine Dion. And so I really just started to press in.
What is happening?
To what my heart was telling me to continue to go on.
Keep talking, baby.
But I also realized the ship was sinking. No, I was just trying to connect the dots. The ship was not sinking. So I've always been drawn to that. Like, how can we reach people? Like, and so we started to do a lot of different things. I gave up student ministries because of kids, right? And so. But we were growing. Like at this point, we were doing a Saturday night service. We were doing 3 on Sunday, and so we're at 4 services, and I'm doing Wednesday nights.
You're having to narrow your job.
So it's like we've got to cut this down, and so we did that. And then John was like, "You should probably do Fight Club now too," and I was like, "Okay, let's do Fight Club." So we started doing Fight Club.
Initially, you were like, "I don't have time."
I did initially say that,
and
yes.
Also, I don't really like dudes.
Right? Yeah.
I mean. Not that you prefer to women's Bible study. You just like, that's not my scene.
Yeah, totally. 100%. Yeah. Especially in Buckley.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Where it's like, I've never hunted a day in my life. Like, what am I, again, I'm the problem here. What possibly could I offer to anyone? I always, like, that still follows to this day, but, so it was that more than like, it's not that I don't like dudes. It's just like I don't know how to interact with these guys. Like they see me singing on stage, and then they don't always respond. And so, but we started this. We started Fight Club, a group. We did it upstairs. I'm pointing upstairs here in T1. Our group met there. Had a few dudes that were involved in that, and then we brought in some more guys into that. Some soccer coaches were involved in that group. So we did that. Then we went to T2 when we started doing Fight Club in there. Then we met in the green room. But I was like, we should do it somewhere else. Like there's another spot where I think guys would be able to meet. At the time, my buddy Ram still has his tattoo shop. And he was coming to the tab, and I was like, why don't we do a fight club in his tattoo shop? I mean, what's more manly than getting tattoos while we studied the Bible, which happened one time. Ram tattooed a guy while we were doing it. So we started meeting at there, and I was like, okay, I can get behind that. Like, this is way cool. Not that I couldn't get behind what was happening in the church. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
this
is my,
right.
This is the avenue in which I want to go down. And so we started this fight club group, and we started getting dudes in there who had no idea who Jesus was. Military veterans. All of a sudden, and this is exactly what I was hoping for, that feeling of walking into a church for the first time, no matter who you are. Maybe this is just an introvert thing for me, but walking into a church scares the crap out of me. Still to this day, I don't like the feeling. If it's a new church, like if I'm visiting a church, it's like, I don't know the handshake, I don't know the thing. As cool as we make it, it's still uncomfortable for me. And I knew that was probably the case for some guys. And when you walk into a church building, and we've done tremendous things to make that not be the case, especially here. So I'm not dogging the tab at all. So, but what I've, especially growing up, is you've got to say the right thing. You have to clean yourself up, wear your suit and tie, like look the part, do the thing. And I think that's just an American thing. Like, you go to church, you dress up. As much as we try to push against that, as much as we possibly can, it's still a thing. So we started this fight club thing in the tattoo shop, and guys just started showing up that typically wouldn't come to church, didn't know who Jesus was. A bunch of military veteran guys just checking out what's going on. One dude decided to start showing up because he had been cheating on his girlfriend a bit, and his girlfriend's mom told him, you need to, somehow she worked with an organization that we supported, and like all the dots connected, and we're like, you need to go over to this fight club thing at this tattoo shop. And so Ram's tattoo shop is above a brewery downtown, and the guy, I was late this time showing up, and the guy, he's like 6'4", 225, like he's solid as a rock, and I wasn't there yet. So he starts walking around the brewery asking all these different dudes where Fight Club is. And they're all like, oh, I don't know, you know, and he finally found it. But this was a guy who had no idea who Jesus was, like was an addict for a really long time, still was. And all of a sudden, we're going through the Gospel of Mark at the time, and we were doing like sermon-based questions and stuff. And so he's into it, and he's like, man, I just can't wait until Easter to hear what this story actually is. Came to service for the very first time on Christmas Eve, loved it, and then started coming to church every Sunday at that point. And so we're starting to see guys get plugged in. We started running out of room at the tattoo shop. We're getting restaurant owners coming in, bringing in really good food for us, and they're getting their lives changed. And I'm just like, holy cow. This is way awesome. There's like, at one point, we had 26 dudes in this small tattoo shop. And that was the one thing I wish I would have changed, is once we got to like 15, like, let's split up, because then it was too much. But the ego side of me was like, no, 26, keep on to that number. Like, let's just keep talking about that. And yeah, but it proved to me that I could do ministry in a place that wasn't necessarily a traditional church building. And so that was probably where the seed got replanted, because like I said before, I wanted to do a church and a brewery before, but it just wasn't the right time. But that was never, it just never really clicked. And then, so Leah's going through her stuff. We're getting really busy, continually busy, here, with Saturday's night services, Sunday morning, everything else in between. And there was a lot going on in that time frame, within our staff and all that kind of stuff. There's just a lot. And I went out to Colorado to blaze. No, I'm just kidding.
The peyote?
There was no marijuana consumption.
No,
but every time I think of Colorado, that's what I think of. Because the first thing that happened when I went to Colorado once, there was a guy at a gas station, and it was like one of those really old gas stations that still had the windy things, and I'm pumping my gas. He had to wait for me to pump his, and he's just sitting on his truck, and he's like, "You blaze, man." This was before marijuana was legal anywhere except Colorado, and I was like, I don't know what you mean, but I don't think so.
Is that like Colorado
like
Awana?
Bonfire? I don't know. Anyway, so I go to Colorado.
Bunny Trail.
Yeah, I go to Colorado and meet with Rob Cupp, and which is a friend of John's. And at the time, there was a position opening up in Manistee for the campus pastor position. And I had submitted like, hey, I might be interested in this position, but I'm not operations or management. Like that's not my gig. But I was like, I might be interested in this. At the same time, I felt really strongly about Traverse City too. Like I just knew I wanted to be somewhere where there was a couple of things to do in a city. And so I meet with Rob. I talk on the phone with my wife that, like, this was the day before we left. And we're weighing our options. That morning, I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to be the campus pastor in Manistee. I don't think that's where God's calling me. I think we're supposed to go to Traverse City. Now, at the time, I was thinking, like, not away from the tab, but with the tab. Like, let's do this together. And so I called my wife, and I was like, I don't think we're supposed to take the Manistee position. And she was like, yeah, I know. I don't think that either. And I was like, okay, great. So it's Traverse City then. And she's like, I guess it is. And I was like, all right. And so then it was trying to figure out how all of that would work. And yeah. And again, it was one of those things where it's just I was too naive again to just like, hey, here's what we're thinking. And not really thinking through any of it, but just this is what we feel the next step is. And so, yeah, that all led to, and then a year later, COVID hit, and
oh yeah, I forgot about that. Get the COVIDs.
Yeah,
the fall.
Yes,
the fall. The fall of civilization.
Yeah. So it was a long, slow process, but it was a continual calling. And yeah, that was.
And from our side, it was, like, there's love from us for Brian and Leah, but there's a part of, and I've told you this, there was a part of me that's just frustrated. Mm-hmm. It's like, why can't you just be happy here? Yeah. Why do you got to break up the band, man? You know, that was all flesh. It was 100% all flesh. And, like, wanting you to do, like, here's the tension. I want you to do what God wants you to do. Mm-hmm. But daggone it, why can't God make you do what I want you to do? Yeah. Which is just be here, be a part of this team, because you've made us so much better. I mean, you revolutionized us in so many ways, from production to creative arts to the way we do things, the way we approach a service, even the way lead pastors are supposed to plan. I know you say you're not a planner, but you're like, you know, it'd be a good idea if I kind of know before the night before what you're preaching on, you know. And Vicky's taken that to a whole nother level. She's like so demanding. She's like, I need 3 months in advance. She's killing me in a great way. Like, I have been pushed by every worship leader you have, but you were the first one to really push that way. Right. And it was so good. But there was never any animosity. There was, at least from my end, there was never, it was more like, you know, there was a reason there were tears at the annual meeting when we said goodbye. We first played the Celine Dion song. But it's like, Brian is going to preach. He's going to do the, you know, the community stuff. He's going to have, he's going to plant a church, which is besides being an overseas missionary, those are about the two hardest things you can do in ministry. It just take it right out of you. Yeah. And I remember telling you, dude, you're about to be the punching bag. Yeah. And you were like, bring it on. No, you were like very prepared. Yeah. You were very prepared.
And And
we've kept a friendship, the whole deal with our families, our wives, the whole deal. Leah's like my little sister if I had one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And part of that too, so part of the tension we were feeling was this isn't a humble brag thing, or like this isn't like self-deprecating or anything like that. I knew I had taken the creative arts team, the worship team, to about as far as I could take it. As far like where my skill set ended, like I knew it had to go. Like I know I talk about this, like I was the one slowing it down. Like I wasn't going to be the one to take it to that next level. I knew that. I knew that preaching was supposed to be like the next thing for me. Like I really wanted to preach. And so when Matt and Vicky came in, I remember it was one weekend where I got to preach. They were leading worship. And it was just like clear as day. It was like, oh, this is the way it's supposed to be. Like they need to take over right now. And then when it was at Isabel's wedding when they played there, and I was like, oh my word, like this needs to happen soon. And so like that was a beautiful transition too. Staff transitions don't always go well, especially when you're bringing in new staff and you're still there. So I worked with Victoria for a year. Not that I was planning on leaving in that year, but then when we brought Matt on too, like the transition was so seamless that it was
they were highly involved as volunteers.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
On your team.
Yep.
And then when you're going,
yep,
you're like, hey, these are the ones.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I don't want them to be the ones.
Yeah.
But now,
But
you look back years later and it's like, oh, that kind of made sense.
Yep. You just got to make room for other people to take over. So, John, I'm coming back
as
your co-lead pastor.
Just have to get that approved.
You can do about it.
There's nothing you can do about it.
I think if it's on the podcast, it's just what it has to be.
Rumor has it.
You were gonna. That's fake. It was.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So my question is, what's God teaching you now? Restoration Church, we're 2 years into planting this thing. You meet in a brewery. We've had some convos. I know that some of the early pink mist of, it's going to be church planting is a great, some of the reels have set in.
Right.
But you're still plugging away, and God's using your church and the people there in a big way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what's he teaching you right now? Because he's always changing us.
Right.
Yeah.
What he's teaching me right now is we need to be laser focused on the gospel and staying true to the gospel and teaching sound biblical theology to the church. It blows my mind how many different theologies are out there amongst the church that are adding things in.
Yeah, false gospels,
putting things in there. It's why we're going through Galatians right now. It's because it's like, oh my word,
we're doing it again.
Yeah, you believe what? And so it's so, I mean, it's so easy, but it's so central to the church is the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the only thing that matters. It's what Paul talks about over and over and over again. Like, let's bring it to the gospel, and we could just camp on the gospel week after week after week and what Jesus has done. So for me, like, it's just, let's teach that. And that's the biggest thing I'm learning.
See, so this is what I've always loved about you and your heart and your passion for ministry. And I didn't ask you to say that. We didn't prep that. We didn't plan that. We don't plan anything on this podcast except who's coming on next week or tomorrow or in 5 minutes. But so the Christian Ghetto person that goes to your website or hears about, oh, there's this cool hip church in Traverse called Restoration that meets in a brewery. They must be ...
Yeah.
It was slightly different ghettos on different parts of Brooklyn, but you and I grew up in the same Christian ghetto, right? Baptist, Wesleyan, whatever. And I know that's what that's how church people think. That's generally, that's a stereotype, but it's a pretty accurate general stereotype. The majority of people are going to be saying, well, you know what they're going to be like? Well, you just heard it right here from the lead pastor. He's saying what God is continually showing you. It wasn't something new. It's something you began with, but he's reminding you daily. Sound doctrine, same thing Paul said to Timothy, same thing he's saying to me, same thing he's saying to you, same thing we just went to a conference with Alistair Begg to talk about. Sound doctrine, Jesus at the center, gospel, gospel, gospel. Because there's all these false gospels.
Yeah.
You know, I was reading an article, and I think I mentioned it in one of the services here a couple weeks ago. There's social justice gospel.
Yep.
There is my sexual preference gospel.
Yep.
There is my comfort gospel. There's prosperity gospel. There's no performance-based gospel. There's all these. There's political gospel that we have to, change, enact change with the Constitution, take back America, and all these false gospels. Just get it back to Jesus and what he said and what it was about.
Yep.
And so for people to get, because we have a shtick too. And when I say a shtick, I don't mean that. I don't mean to diminish stuff, but our shtick is, we're going to be the barbarian church in the land of misfit toys, that are the Oakland Raiders of traditional church ministry, right? Your shtick is going to be, our environment is going to be a brewery. It's going to be smaller. It's going to be more interactive. We're going to get real involved in the community. But guess what? Gospel, doctrine, Jesus, laser focus.
Right.
Same deal.
The gospel of Jesus is what drives us to do everything. And so whether you're super involved in the community or you're doing another thing, it's all stemming from the gospel. It doesn't stem from anything else. You want social justice? Okay, let it stem from the gospel though first. Like, what did Jesus say about it, and how can you do social justice through the lens of the gospel? Don't make it the other way around where we try to fit Jesus into our causes and what we're doing. I mean, it's the what never changes, the how can change.
Right.
Completely. Like the how changes all the time, hopefully.
Right.
Because if we're not changing how we're doing things, then we're probably...
So we're in this series right now at the Tab, depending on when you're listening to it, but the series when we record is called Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and it has to do with just the foundational elements, basics of the gospel. Very first message was that we're saved by grace alone through faith alone. Yep. That's how we're saved. And it's we're saved by grace through faith, no buts, period.
Yeah.
The very second message out of the gate, preached by Benjamin Buttons Brown, was, yes, but faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
And so we hear that faith without works is dead. But I think, back to your point, when you flip that, works without faith is dead. And that's what all these false gospels, if they get it backwards, I mean, it's faith and works have to happen together. But when someone's more about the work than they are about the faith, that's a sort of death too. That's when you get a church that's all about performance or all about prosperity or all about whatever your issue is, the social justice or your sexual preference, and you're just twisting scripture to make it fit what you want to do in the world, all these works, that faith, and there's no, there's nothing really transformative about that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I just lost my train of thought. Honestly, when you were talking, I thought about wearing flip-flops on stage. So
I told you. Britton, get us back on track here, man.
No, I agree. I think that I loved what you said about the what never changes, and I think that often people decide whether they're going to follow the what based off the how. Yeah. And that's such a backwards way to follow Jesus, because at the end of the day, if it's not the gospel that's brought you there, then that's not going to be, the how will never keep you.
Right.
Because when the how changes, you start to associate that with the character of Jesus, and so I think that the centric piece of all faith has to be centered on the gospel, because that's the only thing that's going to keep you there in the midst, especially in a world like we live in today, where everything is changing so often, and ultimately I think what it boils down to is the church is going to let you down, no matter what church you go to, right? Yeah. Whether it be the Tabernacle or First Baptist Lowell or Restoration or whatever that looks like, that church is a church being led by broken, sinful people.
Yep.
But our goal is to drive people to a perfect Savior that's brought redemption into the world through relationship with Him, through His bloodshed and resurrection and ascension into heaven. And so I think that when people build any type of identity or purpose or relationship on anything that's not central to the gospel of Jesus Christ, that's where we find people being ultimately let down in a really, really deep, hurtful way. And I think that a ton of the deconstruction we see today, a ton of the church hurt that we see today, I think if you were to get down to the nuts and bolts, to the core of those issues, it would be a system that let them down, not a savior.
That's right.
And so I think that's as churches, especially just the churches that are at this table, and I think anybody that's listening that's a part of a church that isn't one of our two, but bringing it back to the Savior.
Yeah.
Every week in and week out, when people leave the doors, they have to understand it's not the system, it's the Savior. And I think that if you're building a community that's centered on Christ alone, then you can kind of fail.
Yeah.
And people, there's grace involved in that. There's mercy involved in that. And you can take risks. You can do a lot of different things when you're built and your foundation is on Christ. Because at the end of the day, your system isn't what's keeping people. It's not what's keeping people in their relationship with Christ. It's the fact that they've come close to the Savior.
Yep.
And so I think the best way I've ever heard it articulated was to lead in ministry, you want to be better known for the wells that you dug rather than the fences that you built.
Yeah.
And so it's just this idea of how do we take people to a deep Christ-centered relationship that isn't just something they experience when they are a part of a Sunday or a Wednesday or a Tuesday or a Thursday or whatever else you had to go to, right? But it's one that in the midst of all of that, it was your relationship with Christ that kept you, right? In the unemployment, when you're building gravestones, it was your personal relationship with Jesus that kept you. It was never the system, right? It was your personal relationship with Jesus.
Totally.
That's what I'm hearing come out of this story. That's what led to restoration being planted, is it was your personal relationship with Christ, right? It wasn't systems, it's your personal relationship with Christ. And so I think for anybody that's listening to this, I think doing a spiritual inventory, right? That's a ghetto way to say it, is important though, of why do you do what you do? That's something Ben challenged us with this week, is serving is awesome. Why?
Yeah.
Right. Being a part of the Tabernacle or restoration is awesome. Why?
Yeah.
Why are you there? Why are you doing what you're doing? Because if
what's your motivation?
Right.
Yeah.
Because if it's not built on Christ, then ultimately those things are going to let you down.
Totally. Were you going to say something? Okay. We get a lot of people who claim to be church hurt. I think everybody does, but for some reason the
church hurt me.
Yeah, thanks.
Pulled me. So
here's
so
the deal.
weird.
Here's what I've been telling people, because we're getting a lot of those people in the brewery, because they're all like, "Oh yeah, the American church, right? Like that's that they're the worst." And I was like, "No, they're not. They're not the worst. Actually, there's a lot of good that's happening in the church right now. But specifically, why do you feel that way? Like, let's get to the bottom of this. Don't just put a blanket statement over, the Western church. I just hate the Western church and what it stands for and what it's doing. It's like, okay, what do you mean exactly? Because we're doing all of the exact same things. We're very, very similar. The only difference is we just don't have a building right now. So what is it about the Western church that you don't like? And let's get to name it, because it always probably boils back to either a person or some sort of program that hurt you. Yep. It wasn't the church that hurt you. It was a person or a something.
Can I add one thing to that?
No. Yes.
Please? Are you sure?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A person hurt you, a program, or what I've experienced, or somebody told you the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody told you the truth about you and your sin.
Totally.
And that hurt your feelings.
Yep.
They told me I was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
They told me that it was probably a good idea that I drop my girlfriend since I'm married.
Yeah.
And they were mean in how they said it.
Yep.
Sorry.
And we get those people, and those people come to the brewery thinking like what you thought before, or what people would think before, like, oh, it's a church and a brewery, they're probably cool with everything, right? Because that's kind of all the research I did which wasn't a lot, but the little bit that I did looking into, like, is this actually a feasible thing? Like, has anybody ever done a church and a brewery before? There's been a couple, but everyone that I found, one, they were just using it because they were actually a really awesome church down in Texas, but they were only using it because it was available to them. It wasn't planned. The other one was in Seattle, and it was Seattle. So
super progressive.
Yeah, very much so. So they're like, yeah, whatever you want to feel and believe is good. And so I was like, okay, so there's a space here where we can be very, very gospel-centric. That's the only thing that matters, and teach good theology and be in this space. So when people show up expecting kind of like that gospel light or whatever, like just believe whatever, just like good feeling spirituality type of church, and then they come into a series that's just called Jesus, then they're like, oh, I guess this is not what I thought it was. Now they can either stay or find a church that's going to.
So just from the perspective over here, like what are some wins that you've found in, like we're in a space that people aren't expecting this, but then we're still going to preach Christ crucified. We're going to speak to sin. We're going to preach the true gospel. Like, has there been some cool redemption stories in the midst of that, of people showing up and then realizing that?
Yeah, I mean, a big one is, and this might come as a surprise, but we're getting quite a few people that are realizing they're alcoholics, that are coming to the brewery for church. Who knew? And yeah, so that's a big thing. I don't know if they just feel like they can share it because they're in. I don't know what it is exactly, but there's a lot of people who are. I shouldn't say a lot. There's a few that are realizing that, oh, I need to make changes in my life because of.
Yeah.
I see their relationship with alcohol, and I see mine, and mine's different.
Yeah.
And so I need to change that. So that's one thing. Just this last week, we there was a benefit right after the service for some dude who had cancer or has cancer, and so leading up to it, I asked if they wanted us to provide the sound system and the backdrop because we do this whole thing in the brewery now, and they thought that was great, and so I was able to provide the sound system for them. They were supposed to have a sound guy show up, but one of the band members that was going to be playing at the gig told the sound guy he was off the hook because I was there. But the guy never talked to me. So like, I guess I'm running sound for this thing. But then I got to have conversation after conversation after conversation with all of these people who were there from the band, organizers that were like, oh, so you're a pastor at this church that meets here. And I'm like, yep. And so I've got to share the gospel with bartenders, with
awesome.
All the wait staff, like they all know my name now. And so we're building these connections in the community. There's been some wait staff that have been coming to church now. So it's just been like, that's what's really cool.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, so kind of just like a theme. This is like we kind of try to rope in the change life story with like, what have we seen through this? And I think ultimately was just through your change life story, like this resounding thing that I've heard is God just proving to you that he's enough in the midst of whatever doubts you might have about yourself or about your gifts, your abilities, but you just see God keep showing up and putting you in situations and in spaces and places where he's going to prove to you that he's enough. And so I think that that's just been really cool, and I appreciate your faithfulness to keep stepping into those spaces, even though there might be a doubt or a lack of a plan or whatever that might be. But it's just cool seeing your faithfulness to trust that, no, God's in this, and I'm going to say yes to him and let him be the one that's impressive. And I think that's just so cool. And it just gives a beautiful picture to what faith and trusting in God is. And I do think you're really cool, and you're really good at stuff, and you should remember that, but we don't have to get into that.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me more, please. I need it. I need it.
You have great taste in pizza.
Do you guys need to hug or something?
I thought you guys were going to have a moment earlier.
Oh, yeah, we were. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's a bromance, no question.
Yes.
This is my bro. Brian is my bro.
Love it.
So.
I don't know. Anything for closing, John?
No, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me.
Do you like brats?
Yeah.
Bro.
You ever
yeah, go for it.
You ever had a Dublin store brat?
No.
But I'm just going to tell you right now, Dublin store makes brats, and you probably need to go there.
Way down?
Dublin
like
General
the place
Store.
that burned down?
Yeah, it's now reopened.
Okay.
Nicer than ever. Their jalapeno cheddar brat.
Yeah.
I had a jalapeno cheddar brat in the green room a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was life-changing. There was also, now, I have not had the blueberry.
I haven't either.
There's a blueberry brat. I'm just intrigued. I like brats. I like blueberries. Let's see.
There's like over 30 different brats there, I think.
It was jalapeno. So there was a cheddar and baked potato brat, which was amazing. And then I had the cheddar and jalapeno, which was amazing. And so there's no free shout-outs. And they know it. They know it. Shout-outs. Yeah, they know it. So we're just, if you like brats, I'm just I'm just saying.
Is there anything you want to know free shout out?
Is there anything I want to know for a shout out?
No, you give no free shout outs.
Oh,
we give
no
a shout
free
out,
shout-outs.
and then
Oh,
So like we got to give it up for a certain bro.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We spoke a few. I don't remember.
We spoke out of turn about golf and our brother-in-laws. And Crystal Mountain
Crystal Mountain
Golf. We love you.
We'll be coming to see you.
We'll be coming to see you.
Oh.
You know who you are.
Mundo's, I think, at this point needs to give you free coffee.
Hey, Mundos, where are you at?
Yeah,
This is Brian Williams. He's
dude's-
probably half the
he's
reason
doing-
you're still.
he's doing the Lord's work in there.
He's doing the Lord's work in
One cup of
Mundos.
coffee at a time.
We also-
You know, if you go to Mundos, there's two things are going to happen. One, you're going to get some delicious coffee.
Yes.
Right? Probably three things. Two, you're going to have a selection of plants you can buy.
Yep.
I don't know if you knew that.
Yep.
Another local art.
yeah.
And three, Brian Williams is going to be there or have already been there.
That's true.
Is that
And
safe to say?
All of that is true.
Is
and
that your
four.
I
daily
was there
coffee?
this morning.
Is that a
The parking
daily
lot
coffee
sucks.
run for
You know,
or almost daily?
I
How many days a week?
it used to be.
Oh yeah, that's right. You moved. Okay.
Well, no, I didn't move. I love Mundos.
Okay.
I'll never betray.
No,
Mundos.
not. But
Oh,
no,
it
you
used to be, but
physically
it's probably
moved.
like
no, your
getting too
house.
Oh no,
expensive.
we're closer to Mundos now.
Oh, nice.
No,
Okay.
we recently are able to use another building in the Traverse City area
Gotcha.
for like offices and all that kind of stuff. So for those of us keeping track, that's buildings 2 for restoration, rent 0.
Nice. Well played.
If you want any real estate moguls want to know how I made that work, tell me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. But
buildings to rent 0.
So now that we have that, like we didn't have office space or anything. So it was like, you want to counsel and talk about your life and everything that's going on since childhood? Let's meet at a coffee shop and figure out what's going on. So I frequent there a little bit less. It was at least a daily, sometimes a couple times.
Oh,
But
wow.
because I would have a meeting in the morning and then somebody wanted to meet in the afternoon, and I was like, oh, I guess we're going back to the coffee shop. And so that was getting expensive.
Gotcha.
So if they gave you free coffee, though,
If they
you could probably go there more.
I would.
probably.
I mean,
So Mundos, if you're listening,
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No free shout outs.
Uh-oh.
No free shout outs.
Just to answer everyone's question, we are a rock and roll church. Have you heard Blood, Sweat, and Tears opening?
This is
The
true.
intro. About to start a mosh pit in there every Sunday.
nice.
Nice.
You heard it there first.
Yep.
Wanted to answer
We
your
are.
question.
I was wondering,
You
Love
were
it.
wondering. Yeah.
Sweet.
what kind of church is the Tabernacle?
You were the one that brought the wall of sound to the tab.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, you
It's
were
your
in the
fault.
wars there.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, rock and roll.
That's
yeah.
for you, Vicky.
Yeah, it's a rock and roll. We're going to turn it
Let's
up
all
to
try our British accents right now on the count of 3.
See, this amp goes up to 11. I'm turning it up to 11.
Love it. Well, Brian, you up north redneck, you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you,
You
sir.
OG legit.
I'm the least
up north.
of the redneck
Appreciate
tribe,
you,
Mm.
but I appreciate you
man.
guys.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. You'll be back. You'll be back. There's other stuff we should probably talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll think of it whenever you get here.
All right.
And
All
next time you need to up your game on where the no free shout outs are coming from.
Yeah.
Because when you give the shout out, then you say there's no free shout outs. That means
now they have to give you something. They're obligated.
they don't have to.
It's legally binding.
It's actually between them and the Lord.
Yeah.
This is our prosperity gospel light over here.
I'm just thinking of all the different restaurants and stuff that I would love to get
Charles
some
and
free
Reed?
food. Oh gosh, can we get Charles and Reed?
Yeah,
I don't
no
know
free
who-
shout outs.
Who are those guys?
Pizza.
Detroit style pizza. Best pizza in Traverse
It
City.
is the best
Hot take.
pizza.
Hot take.
You heard it here
Yeah.
right
Oh,
now.
Wow. Okay.
Love it.
Go
Well,
get
Brian,
some
thank
Charles
you.
and Reed, Mundos, and if you're able, get a
Brats.
beer at Right, Brian.
Love it. Thank you, Brian. Until next time, Tab Family, this is Brian, Benji, John, and Britton signing off.